She ran toward me the moment the airport doors slid open, her eyes glistening with tears that looked as if they had carried the weight of months apart. For one breathtaking second, every lonely night I had spent waiting for her disappeared. She wrapped her arms around me, held me tighter than she ever had before. And I truly believed distance had made our love stronger. Then, before I could even catch my breath, another man casually walked beside us, smiled at her with quiet familiarity, lifted her suitcase without asking, and she didn't stop him. My heart froze in a way I had never imagined possible. If you were standing where I stood, watching the person you loved most seem completely comfortable with a stranger, would you trust what your eyes were seeing? Or would you fight to believe there had to be another explanation? My name is Michael, and for 12 years my wife Sarah had been my entire world. We lived in a quiet neighborhood outside Nashville, Tennessee, where life was simple, but honest. I worked long shifts repairing commercial elevators, while Sarah accepted a temporary humanitarian assignment in Europe, helping coordinate medical supplies for communities recovering from severe flooding. The project was only supposed to last 6 months, but delays stretched it to nearly 9. Every phone call became shorter because of time differences. Every video chat was interrupted by unstable internet. Yet we kept promising each other that everything would return to normal once she came home. I counted the days on a calendar hanging inside my garage, crossing each one off like a soldier, waiting to return home. The airport was crowded that afternoon, filled with families crying, children laughing, and couples embracing after long separations. When I finally saw Sarah walking through customs, I forgot about every fear that had haunted me during those months. She looked exhausted, thinner than before, but her smile still felt like home. She rushed into my arms and whispered that she had missed me more than words could explain. Those words healed every lonely evening I had endured. But only seconds later, a tall man with dark hair rolled her suitcase away as naturally as if they had traveled together for years. Sarah turned toward him with a grateful expression that stabbed deeper than any knife. She introduced him as Jacob, someone who had worked alongside her overseas. Before I could respond, they exchanged one last glance that my broken heart interpreted as something far more intimate than friendship. The drive home became painfully silent. Jacob had taken a taxi after helping Sarah organize a few documents, yet his presence remained inside the car like an invisible passenger. Every question I wanted to ask stayed trapped behind my teeth. Sarah talked about exhausted volunteers, endless nights without electricity, and heartbreaking stories of families who had lost everything. I nodded, while secretly replaying the image of another man carrying her bag with such effortless confidence. Doubt is a dangerous thing, because once it enters your heart, even kindness begins to look suspicious. I hated myself for thinking the worst, yet I could not stop. Over the next several days, our home no longer felt peaceful. Sarah often received emails and late-night phone calls connected to the relief organization. Whenever Jacob's name appeared in conversation, I felt another crack form inside me. Instead of asking honest questions, I withdrew. I stayed longer at work, skipped dinners, and convinced myself that protecting my heart meant creating distance before it could be shattered completely. Sarah noticed the change, but neither of us found the courage to confront the growing silence between us. Sometimes love doesn't disappear because people stop caring. Sometimes it begins fading simply because fear speaks louder than trust. One rainy evening, everything changed unexpectedly. Sarah found the notebook where I had crossed off every day of her absence. She sat quietly for a long time before tears began falling onto its pages. That night, she finally told me the truth I had never given her the chance to explain. Jacob was not her secret lover. He was a widowed father from Ohio whose wife had died during the floods while protecting their young son. Throughout the mission, Sarah had helped care for the frightened little boy whenever Jacob worked through the night unloading emergency supplies. On the flight home, Jacob had insisted on carrying Sarah's heavy suitcase because months of lifting medical equipment had badly injured her shoulder. She had hidden the injury from me because she knew I would have begged her to return home before finishing the mission she believed in so deeply. As she carefully removed her jacket, I saw the large surgical scar running across her shoulder. My chest tightened with shame. While I had spent days imagining betrayal, she had been hiding physical pain just to spare me from worrying. She admitted she had looked at Jacob with gratitude because he had become like family during the hardest months of her life. Nothing more. In return, she confessed that my cold distance after her arrival had hurt more than the injury itself, because she had dreamed every day of finally coming home to the man she loved. I barely slept that night. Every moment I had doubted her replayed inside my mind like scenes from a film I desperately wished I could erase. Trust is fragile, and once suspicion takes control, it blinds us to compassion. The next morning, I drove to the airport hotel, where Jacob had stayed before catching another flight. I found him in the lobby preparing to leave. Before I could speak, he thanked me for supporting Sarah's decision to help strangers so far from home. He described her as one of the strongest people he had ever met, someone who comforted grieving families even while hiding her own pain. Listening to him praise my wife filled me with both pride and unbearable regret. I apologized for silently judging him. He simply smiled, shook my hand, and told me that love always deserves one more honest conversation before it deserves suspicion. When I returned home, Sarah was sitting on our front porch watching the sunset paint the Tennessee sky with soft shades of orange and purple. I sat beside her without speaking for several minutes. Then I held her hand the same way I had on our wedding day and promised that next time fear entered my heart, I would choose conversation instead of silence. She leaned against my shoulder, and although the pain we had caused each other could not disappear overnight, forgiveness quietly began doing what anger never could. Some wounds heal because medicine is powerful. Others heal because two people finally decide that understanding is stronger than assumption. Months later, Sarah's shoulder recovered, and together we volunteered at a local community shelter every weekend. Helping strangers reminded us that everyone carries battles invisible to the world. Looking back, I realized the man carrying her suitcase had never been the threat to our marriage. The real danger had been the stories I invented inside my own mind before giving love the chance to tell the truth. Before you go, tell us in the comments. If you had been standing in Michael's place at that airport, would you have trusted your spouse, or would doubt have taken over your heart? If this story truly touched your heart, please like, comment, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe for more emotional stories that remind us how trust, kindness, and honest conversations can change lives forever.